LSU rallies past Dartmouth to win 5-2. We got your recap locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that, and thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Tigers win 5-2 over Dartmouth, a game that wasn't very pretty, but it's one of those games that I look at. I don't know if you agree with this, but it's okay if you don't. I look at a game like that, and I'm encouraged by the fact that when you're not your best, you find a different way to win. Because this is an LSU team that for much of the first 2 weeks has just slugged its way past everyone. Even in the loss Tuesday to McNeese, there were 2 crooked number innings, but LSU still pushed late in that game, put up a couple of crooked numbers, and gave themselves a chance to win. So this was a game where when your offense wasn't very good, you still found a way to get outs, limit your opponent, and put enough offense on the board in different kinds of ways to win the game. LSU in this ball game scored 5 runs on, wait for it, 5 hits. LSU had 5 hits against Dartmouth. But you want to talk about efficiency? 5 runs on 5 hits is a really efficient way to go about the evening. Now, what they were able to do is maximize some of the mistakes by Dartmouth. They took 7 walks. 3 players were hit by a pitch in this game. You saw a couple of safety squeeze plays to get runs home. They were able to manufacture offense when they couldn't just slug their way to it. And by the way, hat tip to Dartmouth and whoever the right fielder was. I'll tell you his name here in a second. I'm going to shout him out because he deserves to be shout out. The right fielder, his name is Axel Reese. Hell of a name, by the way. Made 2 incredible catches in right field. One off the bat of Derek Curiel, one off the bat of Jake Brown. Both would have been run scoring extra base hits. So hat tip to Axel Reese in right field for Dartmouth, who quite honestly kept his team in this game. But it was a game where LSU offensively, as we said, was not very good. Through 5 innings, LSU had 1 hit. Braden Simpson's hit was the only hit through the first 5 innings of that game. And so in spite of that, you still found a way to win, which I think is encouraging. So let's get to the offense and some of the other things in the next segment. Okay, I'll talk about the offense, what we saw, a couple other concerns here in a bit, but we'd be remiss if we didn't start with the pitching performance by Casan Evans and Gavin Guidry. We all, I think, collectively wanted to see Casan Evans extend deeper and into the ballgame, right? That really has been sort of the bugaboo after week 1 where Evans couldn't get out of the 4th inning. And we're looking at it going, okay, if you're going to be a true SEC Friday night ace, you've got to be able to take the ball on a Friday and save your bullpen. You got to get 18 to 20 outs in that ballgame. I mean, you got to get through 6-7 innings to be able to preserve your bullpen for the rest of the weekend, because it's not going to be as good with the guys after that. And so Evans, that opening weekend, giving you just, 3 1/3 against Milwaukee was a concern. And then last week against Indiana, he gave you 5 innings. And both of those outings, he had 75 pitches against Milwaukee, 80 pitches against Indiana. He got you through 5. So this was a game where he got you through 5 1/3. So he did get you into the 6th inning. And a big part of the reason why he ended up being limited was in the 3rd inning. We'll go through the 3rd here in a second, but after 3 innings, he was at 57 pitches. And the problem Evans had was not giving up hits, and he overpowered Dartmouth for a bulk of this game. But Casan Evans in this ball game, he walked Suarez to open the second, and Suarez ended up scoring. And then he walked Rodriguez to open the third, who also ended up scoring. Those are the 2 runs that Dartmouth put up on the board, was in the second and the third, Evans giving up leadoff walks. It wasn't his stuff. It was the command of the fastball that sort of eluded him at times in this ball game. If Evans can have, because like the final line, he gave up 2 runs on 2 hits. 2 hits. And by the way, one of the hits was a little disgusting because it was a bleeder that, because LSU was shifted, got through the middle on the left side. 10 strikeouts through 5 1/3. I mean, Casan Evans recorded 16 outs. 10 of them were strikeouts. I mean, the stuff is undeniable. So 88 pitches, 57 strikes. I mean, that's a fantastic ratio of your total pitches being 57 of your 88 strikes. But the walks, man, the walks to lead off the second and the third, you all know the statistic. A leadoff walk scores 50% of the time. And in this case, both the second and the third, you got down because Casan Evans gave up those leadoff walks. Now, the third inning was the one that I wanted to talk about, because after the leadoff walk, the thing that kind of bit you in the third, I'm pulling up the play-by-play here, so forgive me. In the third, Evans gives up the leadoff walk. Then he goes ground out, double. And the double scored the run. Now, the double was down the left field line. If you remember, if you're watching the game and you remember the play, it was an opposite field shot down the left field line. And Braden Simpson, who was playing in left, gave chase, and he didn't get a good jump on the ball, and it landed kind of in a few feet from the foul line. But it was a play where Evans was given, or Simpson was giving chase and nearly got it. This is another example, though, of why they really need Chris Stanfield back. I'm glad that with Stanfield out, it's giving Simpson and Reeves an opportunity to play in left field. And so you're building a little depth there. But if I'm being completely honest with you, this is a great example, not that I'd ever lie to you, but this is a great example of Jay favoring offense over defense. And he wants Simpson and Reeves, he wants their bats in the lineup. This is an instance where a guy like Daniel Harden is a plus defender in the outfield, an explosive player. And with no Chris Stanfield, Harden would be a not even debatable, a better defensive option. But the thing with Harden is, man, he has explosive power and he is going to be a phenomenal athlete, but he is still adjusting to this level. But I'd argue these are the types of games where you could get Daniel Harden opportunities, right? Because you're playing Dartmouth, you're not playing Tennessee or on the road at Vanderbilt or Mississippi State. So maybe that's something Jay considers, but for now, it certainly seems like Simpson and Dart are the ones that are getting the opportunities in left and will continue while Stanfield's out. But that play there in the third, the double down the left field line, is a play that you assume a plus defender is going to make that play, and Stanfield's a plus defender. If you don't believe me, think about what we just talked about with Axel Reese, the right fielder from Dartmouth, who made 2 outstanding plays ranging to his left toward the line, where he robbed Curiel and Jake Brown of extra base hits that would have been run-scoring base hits, RBI base hits. So, coming into this season, we looked at the LSU outfield, which was set, right, left to right, knowing Curiel was moving to center, going Stanfield, Curiel, Brown, and right. And you said, man, that's arguably the best outfield in the country. It's certainly among the best outfields. You have 3 center fielders in the outfield. You're going to be great defensively. We take Stanfield out, and you've seen that a little bit. Now, this game was interesting because you did see Curiel DH. So Curiel DH, Brown played center, and that gave them an opportunity to put Simpson. Wait, forgive me. Hang on. I want to make sure I have this right because I'm saying Simpson was in left 8. Hang on. Let me just make sure I have this right. It was Simpson in left, and it was Braun. Forgive me, it was Braun who started right. Braun had typically been DH, so it was an opportunity to get Braun in the field. So Simpson was in left and Braun was in right. They moved Curiel to center in this ball game. So but back to Evans for a quick second here, as we sort of deviated and talked about that the double down the line, which is a play that I think Stanfield probably makes. Well, then you get a ground ball to the second baseman, and you get a fielding error on Dardar. He had 2 in the game. We'll get to the second one in a bit. And so then strikeout to end the third inning. But again, the leadoff walk, the double, which I got to believe Stanfield makes that play, and then the error on Dardar. People have asked, a lot of you have asked at this point, like, as LSU had the fantastic start at 8-0, is there a weakness on the team? And the thing we pretty consistently talked about here, if you're an everydayer, is the defense at second and in left field behind Stanfield. Those have been your 2 weaknesses, and both of those sort of showed up tonight. And so it's hard for me to really be frustrated with Evans' pitch count getting up. As we mentioned, he was at, let me make sure I have my notes. He was at 57 through 3. But the walks hurt him. The walks to lead off the second and third, but Dardar's error, not making the play and left, I think those 2 things also pushed up his pitch count. Now, when Evans gave way to Gavin Guidry just continues to be awesome. And the thing about Guidry, he threw 50 pitches in this ballgame, 35 of the 50 for strikes. He went 3 2/3, so he got you home. You burned him for the weekend, but it doesn't matter. You won the game, and you proved Guidry can be more than a 3 or 6 out guy, which I think we all knew that. But he's a guy that's showing you this could be your path on a Friday night in SEC play. Because if you have a situation like this where Evans gives way to Guidry with a 3-2 lead, and Guidry can get you home, awesome. Then you go into the rest of the weekend with Moore, Schmidt, Saturday, Sunday, knowing you haven't even used Sheeran or Fontenot or Garcia or Plog or some of the other key arms that are back there, Williams, Rizzi. I mean, you have dudes that can extend and have dominating stuff both from the left and the right side. So I like what they did tonight, and I think that was intentional. Again, as we do this live, I haven't heard Jay's post-game comments, but I think that was intentional to see how does this look if we were able to give Guidry the ball to get you home and only use 2 pitchers on Friday to have everybody else to try to win you a series. So I like that a lot. Guidry was awesome in this ball game. 3 2/3. He allowed just 1 hit. By the way, the 1 hit Guidry allowed was a ground ball to the left side where Milam was shaded toward third base. If you watch the play, that should have been a dribbler. It was a routine ground ball to shortstop, a play Milam makes in his sleep, but Milam was shaded toward third. I know this coaching staff plays defensive alignment a lot, and sometimes it works. So it's hard to complain when it doesn't if you're going to be congratulatory when it does. But that was a situation where the only hit that Gavin Guidry gave up was a bleeder through the left side. That would have been a routine rollover ground ball. So if you're someone who doesn't like the shift or defensive alignments and say, play it straight up and honest always, then you hated to see that. I'm a little in between. I'm more of the belief, like, play your defensive position. But there's going to be times where you're aligned perfectly and it works. And so it's going to be hard to celebrate those if you criticize the defensive alignment when it doesn't work. But Gavin Guidry was awesome in this ball game. He ended up with 5 strikeouts. So he recorded 11 outs. And of those 11, 5 were strikeouts. He did not walk a batter. And to this point in the season, let me make sure I have this right. I'm almost positive that Gavin Guidry so far this season has not walked a hitter yet. Let me just make sure as I pull up his stat line for the season. Because coming into this game, Gavin Guidry had 11 strikeouts, no walks. So he has 5 more strikeouts. That's 16 strikeouts and no walks for Gavin Guidry in his 4 appearances on the season. So it's so good to see Guidry back. Listen, he's not an overpowering pitcher. The fastball isn't going to overpower anyone, but the breaking ball is so good that hitters at this level really struggle with it. And so if he's locating the breaking ball, it is going to magnify the fastball to be better than it really is if guys are sitting on that breaking ball. And tonight was a great example of that. Now, if there's ever a game where Guidry's not locating the breaking ball and has to rely on the fastball, he could get in trouble. But we just haven't seen that yet. He has been awesome, and that was fantastic to see. So Tigers win it 5-2. They get home with Evans and Guidry on the game. LSU's 2 pitchers combined for 15 strikeouts and Evans had the 3 walks. Again, just 2 runs on 3 hits in the ball game is pretty overpowering stuff. Some of the defensive blunders and a couple of untimely walks in the second and the third to lead off the second and the third are the things that led to any of Dartmouth's offense. But a really nice night for LSU on the mound. Okay, let me step aside really, really quickly, y'all. I'll come back and I want to talk about how the offense rallied and what's next for LSU. We'll do that as we continue here. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Welcome to the 5-hour energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, or cotton candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. I got my number 1 pick. It might sound boring to you. I don't care. I love the extra strength grape. It's Concord grape flavor, similar to grape juice or candy, quite honestly. Soft, rounded sweetness, smooth, almost syrup-like fruit profile. It's consistent, straightforward taste, and that classic purple candy style finish. Grab grape or berry, strawberry, banana, whatever your favorite flavor of 5-hour energy is. It'll give you a boost with 0 sugar. It's 5-hour energy. It's got a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned as well. So I love grape extra strength. Might actually recommend the strawberry banana if you haven't tried it as well. That's a tropical delight with strawberry, a taste that goes into everything from smoothies and milkshakes to cakes and ice cream. Try it out at 5-hour energy. Find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com, 5hourenergy.com, or on Amazon. We're also brought to you by Game Time. Last Saturday, I just happened to be in Houston, Texas for a UFC fight night, and you better believe that your boy got his tickets on Game Time. Always recommend that you check out Game Time, especially now with the NCAA tournament here. The biggest stretch of college basketball season is upon us. Buzzer beaters, bracket busters, and those unforgettable moments that everyone is talking about the next day. Being there live for something like that, well, that's bucket list stuff. The hard part is getting tickets. Long queues, prices jumping around, and surprise fees at checkout. The Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans with constant innovation. The thing I love the most about Game Time is it's the upfront pricing. When you look at the Game Time app, you toggle the upfront pricing, and it will show you the actual price you pay at checkout. We've all been there with ticketing apps where you think you're paying a certain price. By the time you get to checkout with fees, the price is astronomical. Never happens with Game Time. And you can see your actual view from your seats right there in the app with Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying college basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And we're brought to you by Coast. Coast Pay is giving Locked On College listeners up to $2,000 credit for your business when you get started today. If you manage a crew that's construction, HVAC, landscaping, any operations with trucks on the road, you already know how messy gas and material spending can get. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, month end turns into a headache. Coast Pay fixes all of that. Coast Pay is the modern fuel card and expense management tool built specifically for fleets. Fuel, maintenance, materials, all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens, so there's no surprises. If someone fuels up at an odd time or tries to buy something outside their limit, you will know instantly. And right now, Coast Pay is offering our listeners up to $2,000 credit when you get started at coastpay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastpay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to $2,000 credit. Terms apply. The Coast Visa commercial credit card is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts are subject to credit approval. Tigers win it 5-2. Talked about Evans and Guidry. Their fantastic job getting through this ball game. Offensively, though, man, it was a real challenge for LSU. And sometimes throughout this game, they did hit the ball hard, but LSU finished this night with just 5 runs, with 5 runs on just 5 hits. As we mentioned, there were a couple of really hard hit balls. Both Brown and Curiel had the ropes to right field where the right fielder made great plays. But what I really like to see was how LSU, when they needed to, was able to manufacture runs. So let's go to the bottom of the 4th, okay? So LSU's down 2-0, and the bottom of the 4th is when LSU finally broke through. Now, they had an opportunity to make this a bigger inning, but it started with Dardar's strikeout, and then Braun walked on a 3-1 pitch. Wild pitch, and Braun goes to second, and then third. So you got a runner on third with 1 out. Simpson draws a full count walk. So first and third, 1 out. Caraway is called on to safety squeeze. Now, listen, you're an everydayer, listen to any of my content for a long time. I've had a lot of conversations over the years about bunting, and I hate sacrifice bunting. That is giving up an out to advance a runner. Mathematically, it is the wrong play. It is the wrong play. I will always be okay bunting for a hit or to score a run. I will always trade an out for a run. No different than a ground ball to the right side with a runner on third and less than 2 outs. No different than a sacrifice fly. You will give up an out to score a run. So I'm always good with that. So I loved Caraway getting that bunt down. And then remember, that was the play at the plate that they ended up reviewing. Initially, they ruled Braun out at the plate. They review it. And it was a wild play to watch the review because the ball beats Braun. Braun beats the ball to home. But the catcher did a brilliant job of blocking the plate with his foot. So Braun's right hand hits the catcher's cleat, never touches home. Well, as Braun's rolling and the catcher's swipe tagging, he never touches Braun. So if you go to the wide shot, you'll see as Braun gets up and is called out, he walks and touches home plate. Well, after they reviewed it, Braun, his hand never touched home plate, but the catcher swipe tagged and never touched Braun. So Braun having the presence of mind to get up and go touch home plate is why LSU got a run there, which I thought was fantastic. Look, it was a good bunt by Caraway. It was a good break by Braun. It was a good slide by Braun. It was a good play by the catcher to get his foot in the way of the plate. And it was a great presence of Braun to roll out of the way of the catcher and then to touch home plate after the swipe tag had missed him. So, and then nice job by Jay Johnson to use a challenge right there, which obviously awarded you a run and got you within 2-1. So loved to see that. And then the 6th was the other part of the game that I thought I wanted to highlight here. So LSU gets a run in the 4th, and then they put up the crooked number in the bottom of the 6th. So at this point, you're still down 2-1, but this is where LSU took the lead. And again, on a day where you're not having a lot of success swinging the bat, you have to be able to manufacture runs in other ways. Like you saw it in the 4th when you had a walk, a runner taking 2 bases on a wild pitch, and then a squeeze play to get a run home. It shows the versatility of the offense. Well, in the 6th, Braun led with a ground out, and then Simpson walked. So now you have a runner on with 1 out, and Caraway singles through the left side, and Simpson goes to third. So first and third. And this is where Curiel, finally, we saw the big swing that LSU had kind of been waiting on. Curiel comes up with a big knock, the opposite field double down the left field line, which scored 2 runs. Now, you had an opportunity there to make this an even bigger inning, because that's where Jake Brown comes up and ropes one down the right field line on a 3-1 pitch. He gets a center cut fastball and absolutely crushed it. But hat tip to the right fielder, Axel Reese, who made a beautiful play going to his left to rob Brown of the extra base hit, which would have scored Curiel. And then York struck out on the full count pitch afterwards. He was just fooled on a breaking ball and struck out looking to end the inning. So you had an opportunity there to make that an even bigger inning, but you had a runner on via the walk, and you came up with the big hit from Curiel, who if you were watching or listening to the broadcast, Doug Thompson talked about it, and I thought Doug was really spot on. Derek Curiel is phenomenal. He was the National Freshman of the Year, and many picked him to be the SEC Player of the Year. But just look at the standard that we have for Curiel right now. He's hitting 341, and we feel like it's a slow start. And the thing Doug Thompson said on the broadcast was Curiel just doesn't look comfortable. And I was talking actually to Ryan Terrio on Friday, and many of you know Ryan comes on, former LSU national champion, big leaguer, comes on my radio show every Friday. And I was talking to Ryan earlier in the day Friday, and he was specifically talking about Curiel and Milam and Jake Brown as three guys who know their lifelong dream of becoming a professional is at their fingertips. And it's easy, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's easy to press when you know that goal is so close, because this is it. Like, this is your draft year. You're gone after this year. And it's easy to press for the scouts. And Ryan sort of related the experience he had in his junior year in 2001, how it took him a little ways. And he said, look, remember when it was a game at South Carolina, and he just felt he just got a knock, and it was just like he exhaled, and the rest of the season he took off. And I have no doubt that's going to happen for these guys. But again, the thing that's really encouraging for this LSU team is, even though Mike Milam's hitting 289, it's funny to say it, but Stephen Milam, who has been so awesome throughout his LSU career, is sitting there at 289. Now, Jake Brown had the absolutely scorching start. He's at 422 right now. But even though Curiel and Milam, who carried so much of your offense a year ago, have had a relatively slow start, Brown's at 422. York's hitting 323. Aaron Beatty's hitting 314. Dardar's at 308. John Pearson, who had a pinch hit AB and walked, is at 455 in his limited opportunities. Braun is hitting 381 on the season. Simpson's at 455. Caraway's at 333. My point is, they're hitting up and down the lineup, so you don't have to rely on Curiel and Milam to be the be-all, end-all, and maybe that's going to allow them to settle down and relax. I'll tell you something else that I am looking forward to is Chris Stanfield's return, because I think what will happen when Stanfield returns is what we saw on the opening night, which is to say I think Stanfield will go to the leadoff spot and Curiel will go to the 2-hole, and Brown will hit third. I think that's what they'll do. They could hit Brown fourth if he wants to alternate left-right, which Jay likes to do. But remember, if you're in the 2-hole, generally you're going to see more fastballs. And if you're able to lead off with Stanfield and move Curiel to the 2-hole, he's going to see more fastballs, and I think that'll jumpstart him offensively. Jay gave us an update on Thursday on Stanfield, said still not comfortable swinging the bat. They hope to have him back next weekend. That would be awesome. In the meantime, you're getting a lot of guys' experience, which is great. In this game, we got to see Braun in right. Brown went to center. Simpson was in left again. We've seen Reeves play left. So we've seen a good bit there of those guys. And they've gotten some really valuable playing time. Again, Chris Stanfield's played nearly 200 collegiate games with over 500 career at-bats. Like, whenever he's ready, boom, plug and play, he's back in there. I think that's going to open up a lot as well for Curiel and Milam by extension. The one other thing that I got to mention is Dardar's 2 errors. As we've mentioned, people have asked, do you see a weakness on this team? I think a lot of people want to see the starting pitching extend, but clearly you are deficient at second base and in left field, especially while Stanfield's not there. And, Dardar had 2 errors in this ballgame on routine grounders. And, I hated to see that because the error in the third really extended Evans' outing and drove up his pitch count. And that's ultimately his error in the 6th is what ended Evans' night when they went to Guidry. And Guidry came in the 6th and went strikeout, foul out to get out of the 6th. But again, that Dardar error, but for the Dardar errors, Casan Evans probably gets through 6 and gets you into the 7th inning. So, I know Jay Johnson wants, this is Jay. He wants, Jay wants, he is going to favor offense over defense. Forgive me if you're watching live on YouTube. I just realized I didn't have the I just have the right graphic right there. My apologies. I had the wrong graphic right there the whole show. Anyway, my apologies. Jay is always going to favor offense over defense because if he wanted defense, then Jack Ruckert, what we've seen is they'll make late inning replacements like they did again in this ballgame where Jack Ruckert went and pinch ran and then went in at second base. And that's probably what they're going to do. LSU gets a lead late in the game. Jack Ruckert's going to go in at second and play defense. In the meantime, they're trying to build a lead by having Dartar in there on the for his offense, but he's got to be better defensively. Only if he becomes a real liability defensively will they make a change there. And we've seen that in the past where you will sacrifice a bat at a premium position for an elite glove. You know, when some of the obvious examples we've talked about over the years are, you know, a guy like Andrew Stevenson hit 180 as a freshman, but played in center field because he was basically like two outfielders. You know, Austin Nola as a freshman went in at shortstop when he was sub 200 because Paul Maneri wanted to turn more double plays, so he moved LeMahieu to second. That's a famous one. Alex Milazzo, you know, when he was a sub 200 hitter, Jay had him catching because he was an elite defensive catcher. So there are those examples, and I'm not saying they're at that point right now at this early point of the season, but you do have that option with Jack Ruckert as a better defensive option at second base than Dartar. If they get to the point where they feel like the defense is a liability, they could make that change. In the meantime, I think they'll stick with the status quo, which is to say Dartar will play second, so his bat's in the lineup, and when they get a lead late in the game, Ruckert will go in and play defensively. So Tigers win 5-2. They'll be back at it at the box on Saturday, and they'll play Northeastern. And we didn't give you a full-on preview of Northeastern. Northeastern team that was a 49-win team a season ago, but lost everything. I mean, lost their entire starting rotation. Started this season 0-5. They lost to Grand Canyon, Nebraska, Iowa, swept in a 2-game series by Minnesota. They were great last year. They were 49-11, 25-2 in the CAA last year. They made the Starkville Regional. That's a good college baseball team, but they lost everybody from a year ago. And coming into this weekend, they were hitting just 215 as a team. Let me say that again. They were hitting just 215 on the season, and their staff ERA is 15. A staff ERA of 15. So this is a Northeastern team that is a far cry from the 49-12 team or 49-11 team from a year ago that made NCAA regional play. So Tigers should have their way on Saturday behind Cooper Moore. And of course, whenever that game goes final, we'll be here talking about it on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you're watching us live on YouTube, love you. Thank you so much for being here. Please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you're watching or listening on demand, thank you as well. Podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. And please be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. It's your team every day.